All right, all right. Good morning and good afternoon, special districts across America. We are excited to have such incredible turnout today. More than 100 folks with us from across the United States. If you'd like to, feel free to say hello in the chat. And at any time today, this is an interactive session. We will welcome your comments, questions, everything. It should be a really great and interesting and engaging session today. I'm joined by Annelise Spargo, our marketing extraordinaire. Annelise has a lot of experience helping districts tell their stories and, like many of you, try to get the word out to the community in a positive way.
Thanks, Mac. Excited to be here.
So yeah, say hi there, Annelise.
Hey, everyone. Excited to jump in and talk through telling your story with all you fire districts today.
So one of the reasons that we're here is that we're really inspired by the work that you do in your community. And this is a talk that we've taken across the country. I most recently delivered it in Texas at the Safety Conference in Austin, where we had fire and emergency rescue departments. And it was incredible, the stories that they had to share with us. Now, as you think about this today, just a couple notes, like if you have a little pen and paper or notepad on your computer, in the middle, we are going to be doing some exercises and we're going to be asking you to help brainstorm your own district story and why you came to work here. So it's fun, it's interactive, and we look forward to diving in. A little bit about us is we're from Streamline, and we started 2.5 years ago on a journey exclusively dedicated to working with districts. We learned, you are the most under-resourced form of government, the smallest, and yet you have to comply with all the same laws as everybody else. So we thought it would really be an honor to serve you, just like you serve your communities. Many of you here today, actually by show of hands, how many of you are volunteer districts? Yeah, lots. Okay. Yeah, isn't that amazing? So Patricia, many others all fall into that category. Shout out to that. I mean, you're really making it work on a shoestring budget. I had a fantastic story from Austin, which I'll share with you later, of someone who came to work at a district because she was so touched and inspired and got her own district formed. What we're going to be covering today will be covered by Annelise. So kick us off, Annelise.
Well, thanks, Mac. Yeah, we're going to jump in first by talking about why it's important to tell your story and why you should be putting yourselves out there, especially online in this day and age. And then diving into really storytelling versus just telling the facts and why that matters. And then we'll do that workshop that Mac mentioned on what is your district story and help you outline some notes on that. And then we'll go over some tips and tricks for getting the word out and spreading all of the information about the good work that you do. And then we'll do some fun examples and any last minute tips and a review.
And like I said, this is interactive. So if you want to warm up, there is a Q&A. Alex is going to be monitoring the Q&A for Annelise and myself. So Alex, say hi if she
Hey everyone. Yeah, feel free to drop anything in the chat. I just opened that up or put it in the Q&A and we'll make sure to get to everyone's questions.
All right. And Bruce is kicking us off too by saying hello in chat. If you want to say hi and where you're from, that's always fun so you can introduce yourself to each other. All right. So why tell your story? I've had districts say to me, I just wish we could fly under the radar. I just wish that, we didn't have to interact with the public, quite frankly, other than to do our jobs. You ever heard that expression? It would be a great business if it weren't for the customers. Sometimes I think people feel that way about their interactions with the community. And, that makes sense. I can understand. Because sometimes if you're not telling your story, the question is, who will?
Yeah, these are some examples of other news outlets telling district stories for them. So if you're not first to tell your story, it leaves kind of an opening for other news outlets, community members, people to jump in with their own interpretations of what your district is doing. That might not always be accurate. So it's harder to monitor when you don't have control over that narrative. What's being said about your district online, especially with how quickly news spreads these days with all of the online outlets. It's really easy for things to take off. Like we've called out here next door. I'm sure sure you all have your own experiences with Nextdoor. We've heard positives, we've heard negatives, but it's really easy for something to take hold and someone in the community or news outlet to run with that. So it's really important to get on top of that narrative and tell your story yourself.
Yeah. How many of you have faced some kind of misinformation, disinformation, or just, straight up malicious lies? Okay, Dawn has, others have as well. Yeah, this is very common, unfortunately. And for those of you who've been fortunate enough to fly under the radar, that all works great until you're not under the radar anymore. And then all of a sudden, not having communicated for a long period of time can add some mystery. One famous example of somebody telling the story for special districts is John Oliver. I don't know if any of you have seen this. It's pretty interesting.
Special districts are so ubiquitous and sometimes have so little accountability, states may not even know how many they have or how much they spend. A few years back, Idaho launched an investigation of special districts with objective 1 being identify how many special districts there are in Idaho. And when Kentucky investigated, its auditor found that 40% of its districts that were required to didn't even file proper budgets.
I mean, this is an extraordinary mess. As one of my good friends says, you can't make this up.
So just like that, John Oliver, he gets to tell your story if you're not telling your story. Your local editorial board will be telling your story if you're not telling your story. Or worse, angry people on Nextdoor will be telling your story if you're not telling your story. What's happening with all of this is this concept of the circle of trust. And what you want to be for your community is inside that circle. This comes up a lot where you might be portrayed as those other people, that group, that outsider. And that's the suggestion, the insinuation that comes when other people tell your story. They portray you as an outsider. But what your community may forget is that you belong to them. You are part of them. You're part of the community. You protect your community. You're there for your community on their worst day. But they might forget that because they forget who you are. What we're going to cover is how you, through storytelling, get inside that circle of trust. Annelise is going to review with us what is the difference between storytelling versus just the facts.
Yeah, up on the screen, you'll see a really great example of the facts. So this is kind of a blurb that a district put out where it's very factual. So they're giving an update that just provides the information about what happened, this project, and this ordinance, right? And so this is effective in terms of sharing facts, right? It's not very engaging, though. It's not something that you would see maybe on social media or in an article and say, oh, I want to read more about that, or I'm really engaged with it, right? You're like, okay, great, these are the facts, and kind of move right along. Now here we have an example of a story. So how does this shape? Take a second to read this and compare it to that previous slide, how this reads, and if you're more engaged or less engaged. I'll give you just a moment. Pretty interesting, right? I think it's a clear difference when you tell just the facts versus include the readers in a story that they can get involved with and follow along. They're much more engaged and much more likely to engage with your district in that way. It's pretty interesting. There's actually a lot of science behind this too. When you add a narrative to facts, people's brains can follow a narrative much easier than they can follow just individual facts. And you're kind of bringing them on this journey with you. And that's what we're looking for. And that's what we want to help you all with today, is helping you find this story. So sure, you can say we're these facts, we're a fire district and we serve X number of community members and we put out X number of fires per year. We go on this many calls. But that's not really bringing your community into that with you. This story, as an example, shows the impact to the community that those calls did. Like Mac mentioned, these fire districts are here for people on their worst days. So how do you tell that story and bring your community into that with you?
We have this example up in the foothills near where our office is. We have a fire district there, and they have helicopters, and they land in the ballpark, and they land near the community. And as you can see here, Jane says, gosh, they fly so low over our house, it's scary. And there proceeded to be some criticism on Nextdoor and some other channels where people were really frustrated with all the noise. And again, that's kind of that outside the circle of trust. Who are those people making all that racket with that helicopter? So the fire protection district had a brilliant response where they showed, they actually gave a shout out and a thank you to another district, the Veterans Memorial District, for taking such good care of our parks and providing our community with such a great spot to land an air ambulance when needed. So much is said in the story, not only of the kneeling of the firefighter to the helicopter as it lands, but also an air ambulance. This is a really important thing. This is someone's grandma or grandpa or mother or brother or child that's being taken to safety. And it's worth a little bit of noise. And it's so great that there's this park here. So again, it's telling the story of why and connecting the audience to your district through the story itself. So now is when we get out that paper and that pencil, or the notepad on your computer, or your Notion app on your phone, whatever you prefer. And we want to look at what your district story is. Before we get started, I want to introduce an oldie but a goodie. Have any of you seen, by show of hands, the TED Talk by Simon Sinek called Why? Okay, Patricia has. Oh, Christy, Bradley. Okay, awesome. So, you know, it's a really good one. We're going to watch a portion of it to review why. And after we review it, we're going to do an exercise. Here's Simon Sinek.
How do you explain when things don't go as we assume? Or better, how do you explain when others are able to achieve things that seem to defy all of the assumptions? For example, why is Apple so innovative? Year after year after year after year, they're more innovative than all their competition. And yet they're just a computer company. They're just like everyone else. They have the same access to the same talent, the same agencies, the same consultants, the same media. Then why is it that they seem to have something different? Why is it that Martin Luther King led the civil rights movement? He wasn't the only man who suffered in a pre-civil rights America, and he certainly wasn't the only great orator of the day. Why him? And why is it that the Wright brothers were able to figure out controlled powered manned flight when there were certainly other teams who were better qualified, better funded, and they didn't achieve powered manned flight? And the Wright brothers beat them to it. There's something else at play here. Why, how, what? This little idea explains why some organizations and some leaders are able to inspire where others aren't. Let me define the terms really quickly. Every single person, every single organization on the planet knows what they do 100%. Some know how they do it, whether you call it your differentiating value proposition or your proprietary process or your USP. But very, very few people or organizations know why they do what they do. And by why, I don't mean to make a profit. That's a result. It's always a result. By why, I mean, what's your purpose? What's your cause? What's your belief? Why does your organization exist? Why do you get out of bed in the morning? And why should anyone care? Well, as a result, the way we think, the way we act, the way we communicate is from the outside in. It's obvious. We go from the clearest thing to the fuzziest thing. But the inspired leaders and the inspired organizations, regardless of their size, regardless of their industry, all think, act, and communicate from the inside out. Let me give you an example. I use Apple because they're easy to understand and everybody gets it. If Apple were like everyone else, a marketing message from them might sound like this. We make great computers. They're beautifully designed, simple to use, and user-friendly. Want to buy one? Meh. And that's how most of us communicate. That's how most marketing is done. That's how most sales is done. And that's how most of us communicate interpersonally. We say what we do. We say how we're different or how we better, and we expect some sort of behavior, a purchase, a vote, something like that. Here's our new law firm. We have the best lawyers with the biggest clients. We have, we always perform for our clients, do business with us. Here's our new car. It gets great gas mileage. It has, leather seats. Buy our car. But it's uninspiring. Here's how Apple actually communicates. Everything we do, we believe in challenging the status quo. We believe in thinking differently. The way we challenge the status quo is by making our products beautifully designed, simple to use, and user-friendly. We just happen to make great computers. Want to buy one? Totally different, right? You're ready to buy a computer from me. All I did was reverse the order of the information. What it proves to us is that people don't buy what you do, people buy why you do it. People don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. This explains why every single person in this room is perfectly comfortable buying a computer from Apple. But we're also perfectly comfortable buying an MP3 player from Apple, or a phone from Apple, or a DVR from Apple. But as I said before, Apple's just a computer company. There's nothing that distinguishes them structurally from any of their competitors. Their competitors are all equally qualified to make all of these products. In fact, they tried. A few years ago, Gateway came out with flat screen TVs. They're eminently qualified to make flat screen TVs. They've been making flat screen monitors for years. Nobody bought one.
All right. So, and you know, his words have only proven to be extremely prevalent. Like that was before Apple just crushed it and then became the #1 computing company in the world. It was purpose driven, it was why centered, and Simon Sinek was quite prescient in those observations. So again, as he says, people don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. And when we have districts communicate, they always say, we provide, you know, fire service, da, 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 da. But let's go a little bit deeper. So I'd like you to, in your own words, write down your organization's purpose, cause, or belief. Not your mission statement, but like I want you to kind of, in just regular everyday words, you're explaining this to your nephew or your niece, what it is that you do, like why you exist, why it's important that you're there for your community. So please take a second to do that. And I'll share with you ours. You know, at Streamline, our why is that we're here to ensure that special districts continue to be the most responsive and effective form of local government, strengthening communities across the country. We want to see communities better served. That's our why. What's yours? We'll take a minute for you to write it down, and then I'll ask for some volunteers so I can unmute you to share. We'll be right back. All right. So I'd love to have a few brave volunteers who will speak to other fire districts today and share your story, your why, who your district is for the world. All right, who's our brave volunteer? One or two of you. All right, Bob, I'm going to allow you to talk. Have you jump in. All right, Bob, who is your district for the world? All right, Bob is unmuting. If anybody else would like to share theirs as well, feel free to raise your hand and I'll get you next in queue. All right, Bob, we're going to have you unmute your microphone on Zoom, and then we'll be able to hear you. All right, well, Bob's getting unmuted. Anybody else willing to share their purpose?
Or type it into the chat. Yeah.
Okay. Oh yeah, we've got some. Okay. Michael, let's go ahead and have you jump in and share. Who is your district for the world? wonder if we have some security setting, Annelise.
Yeah, maybe there's something on.
Okay, welcome, Liz. Anyone else want to share? Oh, come on. There's so many of you. If just 1% of you raise your hand, we'll have some more examples. All right. I know it can be intimidating, but
Am I unmuted?
there you are, Michael, loud and clear.
Okay, sorry about that. Technical difficulties.
All good.
I just basically jotted down the Midway Fire District protects and serves the members of our community because we are members of the same community.
Ooh, I like that. We protect and serve our community because we are members of our community. Ooh, that's awesome.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks, Michael. All right. Bob's unmuting. Any others that would like to share their who your district is for the world? All right, we'll let you off the hook this time. We'll move to the next section. And but you've gone through this exercise, you've jotted it down, and think kind of what did you discover about yourself? In Michael's example, he pointed out that we protect and serve the community that we are a part of. That's really, really important.
And the next exercise is really about you and your why. So why did you join the district? Why did you choose to volunteer at your local fire agency? What does this mean to you? So take a second and run through this exercise and think about what made you join your particular organization. What inspires you about the work that you do? I'll take a minute here and let you guys jot that one down.
All right, and then those of you ready to share, raise your hand. I think this is an easier and more fun one to answer. All right, Patricia is gonna join us on this one, maybe some others too. Patricia, you should be able to talk.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, loud and clear. Welcome, Patricia.
Great. I'm glad I am IT support, so I figured I could do that. I joined our district. We're all volunteers. I joined because I have these really special IT skills that they really needed.
Oh, beautiful. And when did you join?
I joined last year.
Okay.
Last summer.
Oh, well,
I'm
welcome.
also a responder. I mean, I'm getting
nice.
immersed in a lot of different ways because I think I can help by knowing more about what they do.
Yeah. Isn't that interesting? We've had so many fun stories of why people have come to work for districts. I've heard people say, I was kind of voluntold into this position. Like someone told me I needed to do this or I needed to run to be a board member. I've had people say my dad worked at the district. Sloan, the co-founder of Streamline, was a volunteer firefighter and her dad was the chief. And that's how she got involved. And she wanted a better website experience for her district. Other people said, I needed a job, but 15 years later, I'm really just touched by what I'm doing for the district. I know I'm making a difference. All right, so Ginger, can you hear us or can we hear you?
I don't know. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can, Ginger. Ginger, why did you choose to work for your district?
Well, I just recently started working for the district about 6 or 7 months ago, but I used to work in fire for 10 years. So I chose this district because I really believe that it's not just providing the service to the community, it's a family. They not only provide the fire services, but they also provide medical and education. They have a great volunteer effort and they do a lot of community service work. And I really enjoy that about this district. And I actually retired and came here to volunteer a couple days a week now.
Oh, awesome. Thank you for your service.
Oh, well, thank you.
Yeah. And those are the stories. Like, there's a reason people come back and work there. And for Ginger, it's not the lavish pay in her volunteering. It's the impact that they're having on the community. It comes back to the why, whether it's articulated or not. And we see so much, like, people are touched and they're inspired by what they're doing, but they don't always know how to share that. Maybe Ginger's close friends or family know why she does it, but many of the other people in the community or on Nextdoor don't know, if they even know that the district exists at all.
Right.
Yeah. Thank you, Ginger.
Thank you.
My favorite story that I've heard on this, there were two that were shared as a why for the first question. Somebody told me that the reason why we exist is so that we can be there for our community members on their worst day. And I was like, wow. You know, when you put it like that, that's definitely true. Is that they wanted to provide compassionate and effective service for community members on their worst day. And the other that I found was really touching is we had a woman in Austin, Texas, who shared with me that she was volunteering at a summer camp, and they had an emergency with one of the kids, and they called for emergency fire response, and it took 30 minutes for them to respond. And this was a known issue. They did not have their own community fire protection district, and the child barely survived. And she said never again. So her why was that so no kid will have to wait so long for an emergency response. And so she's a parent in that community. And just 2 months before that conference, when I saw her last month, she had gotten the district formed, and they had just gotten their 2 first apparatuses. So their community now has a district because, and now this leads to this exercise number 3, the user story. She said, as a parent who lives in this community, I want a fast emergency response to my kids' summer camp so that I know my family is safe even when I'm not there. User stories are a fantastic way that we in the web design world make sure that a website is functional. And there's 3 parts to a user story. The first is the as a statement, and that's where you identify the audience that you are. I want blank so that blank. And this is a fun exercise. You don't have to just do it for yourself, but you do it for anybody who might interact with your district or anybody that might come to your website. So think, like, as a member of the media, what would I want and why would I want it? Maybe as a volunteer, I want to learn about upcoming events. As a member of the community, I want to sign up for some CPR training. Think about for a moment one user story, one reason that somebody might come to your district and interact with you. And let's share some examples together. I'll give you a minute. Right. How about some hands? Let's share some user stories with each other. While we're waiting for some hands to raise, one of the craziest examples that I ever experienced with user story discovery was with a domestic violence prevention agency that was one of our very first clients. This is like right out of grad school for me. I worked with this nonprofit, and we spoke with all the staff, and their user stories were clear. You know, people need to be able to donate. People need to be able to download resources. Anyone want to guess in chat what was the most important link and or thing to have on that website? for people in a domestic violence situation? Any guesses? Oh, Kristen. Yes. Kristen nailed it. An exit button. So one of the most remarkable things, like when we talk to survivors of domestic violence, they told us the number one thing I need to do when I'm on a website is I need to be able to get the hell out of there, because the most dangerous time in my life is when I'm trying to exit a violent relationship. And so we built this escape button that would pull up a fake bedding section. So from Target, it basically looked like they were shopping for sheets, and it would stay there even if they were to use the back button. So that was one of the things we discovered. Who would have thought that the most important information for a website to have was to get off the website? But that's what we get when we do good user stories. When we think about designing websites from the outside looking in instead of just the inside broadcasting out. And I've worked with enough organizations that, left to their own devices, will put up their org chart and each of their navigation items is a department or unit within. When we look from the outside in, we use user stories to think about what is needed. Ginger, it didn't clear the history. We didn't have that capability, but that would have been an awesome thing to do if we could have. All right. Okay, so let's share some user stories. Let's see some hands, some brave folks out there. Congratulations, 2% of you have shared. So there's some other ones of you. If today is your day to be brave and share, I welcome you to it. If not, no big deal. But I think we'll get a couple good user stories. People are sweating as they're getting ready to touch their mouse button. Annelise, what's a common user story you see with fire districts?
That's a great question. I think a lot of times I hear user stories for fire districts about their, like exactly as you described, their why for being there is really wanting to give back to the community, but it's hard to communicate that. So we see that a lot, that they're like, I'm here to serve you all, but it sometimes gets a bad rap. So I don't have a specific user story in this format as you've described, but just a lot of that wanting to give back to the community, but oftentimes that gets misconstrued online or when they're trying to tell their story, that there's really an underlying reason why they're there and why they're wanting to serve their community.
All right. Some of you are messaging me privately. I love you all the pieces, and you will need to step up and be a little more brave, if not in this webinar, at least to your community through your website. So, you know what? This is growth opportunity. We're here to witness it. Okay, Michael's gonna give us another example. So for user stories, Michael, take it away.
Okay, this is because this kind of comes with some issues we've had in the past, but
okay.
From a community member standpoint, I said, as a member of the community, I want a transparent and visible fire department so that I know that my tax assessment money is going where it should
be. All right, Michael, that's awesome. And that's all the way from Gulf Breeze, Florida, right? Midway Fire.
Sure.
Yeah, awesome. I saw some Texas ESDs joining us today too. Yeah, no, that's a great example. And that's one that is often overlooked, is like great use of public dollars. Because the next time you have that bond measure, that tax assessment, the sales tax assessment, if in Texas, that's not when you want to then start to build your first newsletter or then make your first post. You want to have that track record of transparency and good, prudent fiscal management. So we don't have stories like this, but we have stories, that are really awesome. All right. One more example, if anyone would like to share. Otherwise, we're going to move into some examples of other districts telling their story. Michael, thank you again. See any others?
Shy today.
Watch out. Annelise might just unmute you suddenly. Just kidding. No, we won't do. But no, you're here to learn, and we welcome you and however form. And please feel free, raise your hand later if you'd like, and we'll welcome questions and sharing any other time. All right, so now we're going to get on to getting the word out.
Awesome. Yeah, let's dive in. So now that we have that storyline really identified, you know your why, you know your district's mission, your story, and keep developing that. But this is a great way to now think about how do you share that with the community, and how do you let them all know what the good work that you're doing in a story format. So of course, always starting off with the most affordable ideas, starting with your website. Of course, everything should always link back to your website, but your website is a great way to spread the word about what your district is doing. So some options are, like you said, see here, feature on the homepage. Make sure that you have great pictures of your staff right there on the homepage. It's always huge for fire districts. Anytime you can get pictures of your staff or the team out on calls or even just around the office really brings that personal element back to it. So that's a really big thing. I know a lot of districts like to share their apparatus right there on the homepage, but that's not always what the community wants to see. They want to see who they're working with, and so they can identify with them. So making sure you have those great photos and images up on your site is huge and great at helping tell that story. And then keeping SEO in mind. How many people are familiar with SEO? Maybe by show of hands. Anyone? A couple folks, yeah. SEO stands for search engine optimization. So I'm sure we've all used Google before. So SEO basically helps the search engines identify and index the content on your website and helps that pop up in search results. So if your community is looking for information, make sure that you're going to be right there at top of that results list. So keeping SEO in mind when you're developing your website to make sure that you can reach your community effectively is really important. And we have a great checklist we can share with you all in the follow-up resources around SEO if you'd like more information. But that's a great way to get started. And I know I touched on apparatus a little bit, but I think this is a really great point with all you fire folks on how many of you fire districts have an apparatus page on your website currently? I show of hands.
Oh yeah, everybody. It's so cool. I mean, I can't blame him, Annelise.
Oh no, I don't blame you at all. My suggestion here is for telling your story purposes. A lot of folks see your shiny new apparatus, especially in the community, and they're like, what the heck? They spent my tax dollars on this piece of equipment or on this shiny new thing. Did we really need that? And so how do you bring that story back to that apparatus page? How do you tell why you needed this apparatus, why you needed this new truck or this new engine? And then what is that going to do for the community? So really breaking that down for them, saying we have this new shiny piece of equipment that's going to allow us to serve more community members. We're going to be able to bring on new firefighters, we can do increased response times, things like that. So what is the actual impact to them? And how do you bring them into that story of what the apparatus is going to do for them? So that's a great opportunity for all you fire folks to start tying that narrative piece into your day-to-day communications is right there on your website. The next little piece here is email campaigns. And again, I'm going to ask for a show of hands. How many of you do regular newsletters at the moment? You got a couple folks, 1, 2. Yeah, regular newsletters are an awesome way to keep your community engaged with you and tell those specific stories. So we've seen fire agencies use their newsletters to do like call outs from the chief where they can tell their story, specifically why is the chief there? Why is the chief working for you all? And tell that story and get that in front of folks. Or also tell a story about recent project updates like we saw with the McCallum Hill Fire District. Tell what happened with that. What was the story? How did this impact the community? It's a great way to engage your folks, and doing it on a consistent interval will get people interested and ready for that information. If you do it, every Thursday or once a month on the first Monday, it's really helpful for getting your community engaged and a perfect platform to tell your story. There's a lot you can do with email as well. Pushing email users right back to your website is huge. You can also push them to social media, but again, like I mentioned, bringing everything back to your website is key.
And again, like fusing in, like, so you have an apparatus photo, like Annelise said, but if that apparatus photo says, protecting the community as part of the community, to reference, I think, Michael's example, or, if next to that new fire truck, it says to be there for you on your worst day. Wow. Like that again is connecting the why to the what. The apparatus is the what, but the why is to be there for you on your first day, on your worst day.
Ginger, I love this comment that you just said. Could this be created through AI from the monthly board meetings? Most departments have limited staff. Definitely. There's so many AI tools and we have great AI resources. I think we have some talks coming up to join as well. But AI is really helpful. My suggestion here is kind of going back to that fact versus narrative piece. So telling the board meeting information in terms of fact might not engage your community. They might just kind of skim through that and be like, great, like I'm looking at some financial reporting, I'm looking at some numbers, some data, and I don't know what the story is behind that. So how do you turn that board meeting into a story that is actually engaging and gives them the information they need? So connecting again that what to the why, like Mac was just talking about.
And just an example, I mean, for the other 90% of you that do not have, to kind of entertain Ginger's idea for a second, for those of you who do not have the time to write a newsletter, Ginger, would you mind if we just built a newsletter for you, pretty fast in 60 seconds? Is that cool? All right, here we go. So just like that, I asked ChatGPT to help write a newsletter for the Sun City Fire and Medical Department, which is Ginger's district. All right, so we have a chief's message, department updates, community safety tips, fire prevention, community engagement, call statistics. And I can even say, you know what, shorten this to, let's see, hey, where's my chat? Go. Shorten to 3 stories, paragraph form. And what's cool is that this will help, get some great newsletter stories going for you. Fire safety tips for warmer months. As temperature rise, so does the risk of fire-related incidents. Be mindful of heat, safety, properly store flammable materials. Meet our newest firefighters, so she can insert a little blurb about them. Community CPR and first aid classes. Ginger, do you have CPR and first aid classes at your district? All right, it says follow us now. Well, you do now, Ginger. But no, just kidding. But of course, what's great is just having this written and then being able to edit it. You can give it specific information. You can feed it a website. You can even say, create a graphic of Ginger in a pink fire truck. And here's, let's see, it might create an image of Ginger. And if you need a graphic for your newsletter and you don't have one, ChatGPT or other AI technologies can build one. Oh, okay. Well, Ginger, you're now a Dalmatian. But just like that, it created a brand new image that we could use. So AI is an incredible resource as long as you supervise it and get it out there. But man, you want to generate some story ideas, or you even want to give it just some quotes or information from board members. It can generate some FAQs you can send to them and then write you some articles. So what a great friend to have when you're resource constrained. We have a whole talk on AI and how you can use it for good in your district. So of course, sign up for more of these webinars and we'll be happy to teach you more tips and tricks.
Yeah, you could even plug in, like if you have bios for any of your firefighters or your chief or anything like that, plug that right into ChatGPT and have it write a story basically on their bio, which would be a really cool way to use AI, get a narrative out of it. Cool. Jumping into some more affordable ideas here. Obviously, local publications, media, newspapers, things like that are a really easy, affordable way to get the word out. The first step is obviously trying to understand what newspapers, what publications are out there. And I know a lot of people think this is dying, but there's still so much happening out there. I know one specific example that I just experienced is my local magazine. I live in a really small community here, and they publish a magazine, and they just shared an article about the local utility district. And it was a 2-page spread. And I was like, wow, a 2-page spread on the utility district. Like, how cool. And it kind of followed the new general manager and his plans for the district. And that was one part of it. But then it really ended up talking about the district and their transparency and these transparency awards that they received and all the great work they're doing. And it was a really engaging way to follow along what's happening with the districts, but kind of through the lens of that new GM. So really great way to tell the district story, but through that lens. So I'll share that with you all in the follow-up if I can find that online version. It's a really great one. But yeah, anything else here, Mac, on local news or newspapers?
It still means a lot. It's good for credibility, and elected officials also really appreciate this. So your board members love a good local media piece because it's still a third party, and there's still editorial independence in many communities, and so this is a great way to show what you're doing.
Absolutely. Yep. And then another really local, really easy, lightweight opportunity for districts is more guerrilla marketing efforts right around the community. So things like sidewalk chalk, things like yard signs, things like community events. So like a pancake breakfast or a spaghetti dinner fundraiser. And you can use signage if you have a sign outside of your district, post that out there and get folks to engage with you. Use sidewalk chalk to creatively talk about that event, to creatively talk about what you're doing, drive attention to that district in a positive way. So there's a lot you can do out there in terms of guerrilla marketing stuff. That's really easy, really local to do. I know my local fire district does an annual pancake breakfast that has a really great turnout, and it's been through word of mouth and some great signage that they've been able to get a good turnout. And a lot of the community members now feel more positively about that district as a result. So really great opportunity there.
So let's get into some examples and tips. So you as a district, fire district with limited resources, we want to show some of our favorite examples from districts just like you that are getting the word out. One I just found this morning actually was from El Dorado County Fire. They received a $600,000 contribution toward a ladder truck by engaging a nearby tribe that had, funding from gaming. That they were able to donate and make the community safer. And they partnered up and got good PR for that community partner. So that's awesome. That's awesome to see that go in there. Now, for a second example, I want to show you one where nobody had to appear on camera. Not saying any of you are shy, but if you are, and you're like, man, we want to tell our story, but nobody wants to get on the camera or on the Zoom or anything to do it. I wanted to share what a community in Utah did. And this isn't a fire district, it's actually a community utility district, but it does the same thing in keeping the community powered and safe. And I thought this was fascinating. They were able to do this. I think they used Avalanche Media, and they're in Utah, right, Annelise? And they were able to put this together for just a few $100s to tell their story. Let's have a look.
If you live in South Utah County and get your power from SESD, did you know we've managed to keep your rates the same since March 2009? That's 10 years. And after more than 110 years of reliably serving your community as a not-for-profit power provider, we figured it was time to formally introduce ourselves. We're SESD, South Utah Valley Electric Service District. We happily serve 4,000 customers just like you in South Utah County. SESD provides power to rural and mountain areas, as well as the cities of Woodland Hills and Elk Ridge. Some of our customers even reside in Spanish Fork, Salem, Payson, and Santaquin. SESD is as unique as the diverse areas we serve. We're locals, working for locals, and we're a public power company that genuinely cares about giving you the fairest rates possible. With SESD, you only ever pay for the power you use, nothing else. Our service has the personal community touch. Call our office and you'll speak to an actual person, probably even someone you know. And out in the field, SESD linemen are the best of the best. Their deep local knowledge lets them respond quickly and effectively to any situation. When wildfires or snowstorms strike, we're working on the front lines in the toughest conditions. No matter the challenge, SESD has your back. And we don't keep you waiting. We get your power back on, fast. We've been here since the beginning, and we're as excited as ever to power your South Utah County. Give us a wave next time you see us out there in your community. SESD, reliable service, reasonable prices, power to light our future.
All right, so easy, so clear. And again, if there is a nasty headline about that district, this video would be quite the antidote for anybody who's doing some genuine research on that. Another example, South Lake County Fire Protection District. They received two new helipods, but they told the story about how this groundbreaking technology, also manufactured near their community, is something that they're using for good. Districts Make a Difference. I don't know if you follow them, but it's a terrific campaign that is actually highlighting the good works that districts are doing across the country. And so a resource conservation district partnered and created a prescribed burn association. And, this just raising awareness about fire prevention. It's a great story. And there are some cool things happening there. Even like the Godfrey Fire Protection District, they had a radio communications project. That was a $60,000 boost from some ARPA funding. They were able to share that win. Lastly, there are some of you that don't want to appear on camera and don't want to put yourself out there, but there's also examples of districts that very bravely put themselves out there. And one thing that's very cool about being a special district is that you can look low budget and no one will hold it against you because it's just responsible use of public funds. Let's look at how a mosquito district, which had a very simple campaign of just trying to get people to pour out standing water, addressed this. Let's have a look.
Gosh, I hate the 80s.
What? The 80s were the best.
Wait, are we talking about the same thing?
80s music alone was awesome. I thought that you liked the Eagles, the Smiths, the Cure. Come on, Jimena.
It's not the 80s decade that I hate, but the 80s mosquito. Look, I just saw one.
It's here. It's set from the 80s. Basic mosquitoes. The worst of the 80s. It's all set up. You're right. 80s mosquitoes do suck. Let's not bring them back.
Okay. The video might be a little bit glitchy for some of you, just depending on our transmission, but the video itself is pretty silly. But the outcome of that video, they put themselves out there to educate everyone. And what happened is they ended up on the front of the San Gabriel Tribune, and it was pretty incredible how all of that worked. So some of the tips and the takeaways here is to make it personal. Like the more that we connect the story to the community members, the more that it really resonates and works. I mean, it's hard to think of the people dancing in that mosquito video as being anything but committed public servants and perhaps a bit silly, but it would take away any kind of accusations or alternative narrative that could come up. And so remember, just thinking about why, as Annelise pointed out earlier, why does the new apparatus matter? And then what do we want people to feel? So this is an example from Maya Angelou where she says, I've learned that people will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel. And, websites are stored in that same part of the brain that stores a first impression when you meet a person. You always remember how you feel when you meet a person. Well, the same thing. If you go to a website and it has that awesome fire apparatus saying it's there for you on your worst day, or it has great financial transparency right there, easy to find, the way that they feel is that this is a responsible organization. If there's even like people that are low budget and all are volunteer, like some of you joining us today, if you're sending out a notification to the community with your logo on it, but you can take, 30 seconds with an iPhone to get everybody with their t-shirts out in front of the equipment, it helps people recognize the people, the location, helps them think of you as somebody that needs their support, not just serving them the other way around. Like the more you can get the community to give to you, the more they will like you. It's this really interesting thing. Also, like making it personal with, you know, dogs or pets or things like that, kids, trainings, all of that is really, really powerful, you know, when you can make that personal. And of course, you know, in the previous example, as we saw, like special districts always want to communicate just like this, where they say, hey, as a result of this and this law and this thing, there's a fine. But what I loved is how the city of Atlanta did this. Instead of just putting the new regulation out there, they said, if you just moved here, please come to our office to pick up your parking ticket. New residents receive 1 parking ticket to help them get used to life in Atlanta. So Annelise, like, yeah, what else should we do in terms of size and how we communicate the content?
Definitely. Yeah. I think people's attention span is going down. Obviously, we know that with technology, but I think on average, it's about 9 seconds. You have about 9 seconds to capture someone's attention. And so using these tools to make sure that the content is digestible and easy for them to tackle and just understand immediately is really important before you lose them and they move on to some other content. So like this says, people scan and then skim. So if they're going to scan through it, something has to pique their interest enough to want to stay focused on that content. So keeping it really easy and lightweight, using bullets, like this says, using different colors and headings to make sure that that content is easy to follow and easy to read so that it is engaging and you don't lose people along the way.
So to recap, your story matters. You should tell it. And if you don't, you have to think, who will? Just a reminder to keep that why present. Don't just do the what. As Simon Sinek said, people buy why you do it, not just what you do. They buy why you do it. And whenever possible, try to make it engaging, make it personal, keep it succinct, and you will connect. Because telling your story, it doesn't have to be expensive. And there's so many great tools, whether it's AI, social media, sidewalk chalk, whether it's having that event and fundraiser. Even if 10 or 20 people show up, that's money your district didn't have before. What you're doing is you're getting inside the circle of trust. Because after all, you are protecting your community. You are being transparent. You are using their funds to keep them safe. And when you do that, especially when you're volunteering or when you're showing up, when you're continuing to work for your community, you deserve your community's trust. And by telling your story, you can make sure that you do. My name is Mac Clemmens. This is Annelise Spargo. We are passionate about helping you tell your story. So if you have any questions or things come to mind, please feel free to email us. We love hearing from districts. We're pleased that as Streamline, we are now working with 2,300 districts across the country that are on the web platform. And if there's anything we can learn or share with you to forward your missions and help your community appreciate the great work you're doing, please let us know. Thank you very much.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks for joining us today.
All right. Take care. Bye.